to the Insomnicat Show with Nicolette and Brian. We'll get real deep with you, educating, inspiring, and solving problems with some of the most inspirational humans on the planet. Buckle up and come on the journey.
I'm excited. All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Hasani X, or just call him X. He is the chief of story over at Lead Your Story, and he's a communication strategist as well. So he's here to talk to us about our favorite topic, storytelling, I'm sure. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here, definitely. All
right, so we're talking about storytelling. Why don't we kick off by telling us a little bit about your story and how you got here?
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Oakland, California, and grew up in the 80s, tough time, height of the crack epidemic, urban environment, pretty tough place. But I found a way to make it out, you know, God willing, and through a couple of turns, I've missed some tragedy over here and tragedy over there. And I was able to go to school, first person in my family to get a college degree, University of Pennsylvania, went to an Ivy League school, just went to this whole new place where you experience something different, something fresh, something that didn't even know was possible. And from that experience, met a great people. I was able to understand what it meant to actually run a business and to really go out there and, you know, trade on the open market. Here's my value. Do you want it? Pay me for it. So I started a business fresh out of school, and all is well. That's how things go. All is good until what? It's not. Yep. I got a call one day, my mom telling me, you know, Hasani, they killed him. I'm like, what are you talking about, Mom? They killed him. And she was talking about my middle brother, my younger brother, Ramin. He was shot and killed in Oakland, California. And that was kind of a pivot point for me, because at that point in my life, I was always the one who found a way to succeed. Yeah. And the last conversation I had with my brother was one where I told him it was his fault. He was in his predicament. He wanted to blame me. I wasn't the big brother he needed. I was like, no, we grew up in the same place, had the same opportunities. It's on you. And it was at his funeral that I finally got what he meant, that along the way, I've always been fearful of leading. You know, have you ever had that moment where you figure out something about yourself and it's profound and it's earth shattering and you have a decision to make? And that's when I made a decision to never allow fear of something to govern my life. So I transitioned from building businesses to working on myself and tackling my fears. I started jumping out of airplanes. I woke up one day recognizing I was scared of physical confrontation. I became a professional mixed martial arts fighter, got into a cage and fought. Crazy story
we're
there.
Having a whole other conversation now. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
Yeah. I still train to this day when I can.
Awesome.
I had 3 professional fights, and it was just to get over that fear. And in tackling all of these fears and finally getting okay with myself in leading, I was doing a lot of personal development and coaching. You know, I'm married with 3 kids, and everyone, when they look at X, the character X, they always ask, well, how do you do it? Mm-hmm. Whether it's on the business side, the marriage side, the fathering side, the personal development side, what is it that you do? And I started to give people that advice. And I went into a stint of 10 years of just coaching and leadership development from publicly traded companies to entrepreneurs. And about 6 years ago, I made a transition where I recognized and had another epiphany. The same things I was doing to build businesses when I first started my company, 4E Consulting, out of college, and what I was doing with Rise of a Leader, it was the same exact thing. It was just helping people to better communicate their position, their value, their story. And if you can do that internally with yourself, you get the most out of yourself. If you can do that with your team, you'll bring your team together. You get the most out of them because they will believe in something. They will come together. And all the friction and chaos, and though, like I said, we love some chaos sometimes, we are able to get the best out of ourselves. And the same thing with the market. If we can really position our story, our value, what we do, why we do it, the market will be more in tune to us, connected beyond product and price. We're no longer a commodity. We're not a choice among many. We are the choice because of how we make people feel, how people connect to us. And that was my epiphany, that leading internally and branding are the same exact thing. And that was the birth of Lead Your Story.
Can I go back? And I don't want to open wounds, but you said something that really stuck with me for a second. I am curious. So, when you got there and you had this epiphany at your brother's funeral, and you realized that you had this fear, was it something that you thought that you could have done differently? Is that where that came from? You could have led differently. I guess I'm asking because I always, I kind of am of that mindset that you were in initially. It's basically on you, right? No matter who you are, it's up to you to do what you got to do. I can't do it for you, right? So I'm curious what your perspective was there.
No, that's a good question, Nicolette. The soul searching wasn't in just seeing or experiencing his death. It was kind of seeing a pattern. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think differentiates me is I'm able to see patterns.
Right.
I'm able to look at something complex and say, here's a pattern I see. And then a leader goes, wow, I didn't see that. I started to see the pattern, and it was that experience. So I refused to lead. When I was an athlete growing up, played football, track, whole nine. They wanted me to be team captain. Nah, I don't want to do it. Wanted me to be student body president. I got a 4.0 in school, in high school. Didn't want to do it. Anything that required me to be out front and say, this is what I believe, this is what I think, I'm taking responsibility for helping to get us there, I punted on. Right. Every time. And I was like, where does that come from? Mm-hmm. And I recognized it was that as much as I feel like I can take care of myself, it scared me to death to be responsible and to be accountable to other people. Mm-hmm. And it was like, it was kind of like that come to Jesus moment. Like, I gotta do something about this or it'll forever plague me. And, I do well with extremes. Like, I gotta attack it or it's gonna linger. And that was that whole, I'm gonna go after it with a vengeance. And it changed my life, changed the trajectory of my life.
Do you think it was also at some point you realized who you are? It wasn't even just the fear of leading, but it made you realize who you were more at that point?
Yeah.
Where you became more comfortable with yourself?
I think so, Brian. I think there's no way to connect deeply with yourself until you're at the precipice and all this dark around you. It's only in that space where you have to let go of all preconceived notions. And then you say, this is who I am. This is what I'm made of. And it is through that experience. Like, we can talk ourselves up, right? This is part of my personal development story. When I'm working with coaching, when I did this, relentlessly with other people, it was, dude, you can go read 1,000 books on Google on personal development, self-help, and all of that good stuff. But until you get into the ring, the proverbial ring with your monster, it will always be yours. My dad used to tell me all the time, everywhere you go, there you go.
There you are.
Yeah.
It's funny because Nicolette and I had this conversation yesterday about like someone telling you something versus experiencing doing something itself. It's such a different beast, Yeah,
definitely, for sure. And I would tell anybody listening that whatever you've been avoiding and you've been seeing the pattern and it pops up in different areas of your life, that is for you. That's not something that's happening to you. It's for you. So jump into the ring, go punch that monster in the face, and invariably something magical will happen. One, you won't die. So you can come out of that saying, wow, hey, I made it. I survived. Right. Secondly, you'll find that the monster probably wasn't as big a badass as you thought it was. I remember a story, if we got the time. When I was 5 years old, I saw The Incredible Hulk for the first time. And it scared the crap out of me. And I had a nightmare that the Incredible Hulk would pull me into the toilet and all this other stuff. And I told my mom about it, and I didn't want to go to bed the next night. And I got one of those old school moms like, I don't care. It's 8 p.m. You are going to bed right now. So I'm in the bed, and the Incredible Hulk is going to kill me. I know it. And I feel something behind me. And I'm like, oh, the Incredible Hulk is here. He's going to get me. And I told myself, all right, if I don't move, he can't see me and he can't get me. So I just got to stay still. I literally stayed that way until the next morning at 8 p.m. I didn't move an inch, and I kept repeating that mantra to myself over and over and over again. My mom comes in about 8 a.m. the next morning and was like, where are you at? Usually out front eating cereal, the floor model TV, that back then. And I was like, I just popped up. I looked at her, right? And the first thought I had was, where were you, right? Like my mom wasn't there. But the second thought I had was, he didn't kill me. I turned around. It was my pillow. Popped down, went and got my kicks, gave my kicks in front of the TV, and watched The Incredible Hulk. And that's kind of the mantra that I live by. Once you get through it, it's how you frame the story that tells you everything that you need to know about yourself in that situation. Mm-hmm. It can't be traumatic unless you rehearse the drama of it. Drama doesn't turn into trauma until you rehearse that story and solidify that it was traumatic inside of your own head.
Right. And I think that's what people miss a lot. It's in your head that all this drama and all these things that aren't real sometimes happen. It's not the reality of what's there. It's what's going on in here that creates that.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
And we see that a lot when we look, hindsight is 2020, but when we look back and things that felt really, really big in the moment, we look and we say, that wasn't so bad after all. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, what was I? So it took up my life, right? I've had situations that were just consuming. And then you look back and you go, for that, really? That.
I think you all said a really good point here. I think the secret here is the timeline and time frame it takes for you to gain that perspective. Mm-hmm. If it took you 10 years to get it, that's 10 years of practicing, drilling, and rehearsing the story of trauma. Right. Mm-hmm. I can't say I earned it, but I definitely have perfected how to rearrange a story to my benefit almost instantly. And I can't tell you how that gives me a sense of confidence moving into the unknown. Like go ahead.
Can you give us an example? What do you mean by that?
Another example, childhood. My dad, God rest his soul, he just passed away recently. When I was 10, we used to go to my aunt's house in San Diego, and she was the rich aunt who had a pool because we lived in the ghetto. We didn't know what pools were, couldn't swim. And we would get to her house, and all my cousins, we were younger, we couldn't swim. So, we were very cautious in the 3-foot end of the pool and stuff like that. And I had this Hot Wheel. You ever had Hot Wheels? Mm-hmm. My favorite car, I was playing with it and I threw it between my legs and it rolled into the deep end of the pool.
Oh, crap.
My dad comes up behind me and says, go get it. And I look at him like, huh? Go get it. Go get it. And before I knew it, he picked me up and threw me in the deep end. My life flashed before my eyes. I'm struggling. I'm gasping. I'm soaking in water and think I'm going to die. I get to the edge of the pool somehow. I pull myself out. I'm crying and hollering. He says, come here. Picks me up, throws me in again. This went on for a good 4 or 5 minutes before my mom intervened and said, Bernard, leave that boy alone. I go on the side of my auntie's house. I'm crying my eyes out. And after maybe a few minutes, I go, wait a minute. I didn't drown. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I can play in the deep end. 10 minutes later, I was the only little kid playing in the deep end of the pool. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I say I came about it naturally. From the Incredible Hulk story to that, as soon as I go through something, I don't want to deal with that pain. Right. So I'm going to reorganize that story into a way that serves me and empowers me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key. The quicker you can do that and the more efficient you are at rearranging that experience into an empowering story, can nothing stop you.
Now, I think you and I had dads that came out of the same playbook because that's how my child was. Now here's my question. Do you think a lot of that influenced, right, how you go about approaching these things? Like, okay, I know, those early childhood pieces, like, it removed the fear from you. I could accomplish things, right? Because it sets that in your mind versus parents sometimes who do things for their children, because it would have been just as easy for your dad to go out and go down and get it himself or to get the pool skimmer and pull it out for you, but he had you do it.
Yeah. I don't know if I would do that with my own kids, but I will say that we've crossed that threshold where we protect and pander to people around us, not just our kids. I see it in companies. Yeah. And as a result, we don't give people the opportunity to find the best of themselves. It's only in challenging situations that you find the best of yourself. Mm-hmm. It's only in those experiences that you develop what I call real confidence, because that confidence is undergirded by experience, not bravado, not a hope, a wish, and a dream. That helps, right? But you need that other part. So I think it definitely influenced me. As a parent of myself of 3, I am, you got to have that dynamic. My wife will love to be the more nurturing, and I step in and I'm like, no, basically you got to go to the bottom of the pool and get it. And I think there's this happy balance between the two. If you eliminate one side or the other, I think cup is half full. Mm-hmm. And I think society wise, we're in that space where the pendulum has swung the other way, and we're a little bit too cautious. We believe people are made out of paper, and they're not. Mm-hmm. We just got to give them the opportunity to show up and to struggle a little bit. It all comes out for the better when we can experience that.
Now, you also mentioned you did MMA, right? So, I come from, martial arts background too. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. And here's the thing. I think one of the biggest benefits, even like wrestling as a kid, one of the biggest benefits was always that one-on-one competition. Like the only person that was responsible for me was me. It didn't matter. All my teammates helped me. They trained. My coach was there, but I was the only one on the mat, and I had to accomplish whatever I had accomplished, and I think that for me, I think that gives you a super positive mindset in terms of being able to accomplish things.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's just nothing like being in the ring. Yeah. Now, I have 3 kids, and from my brothers, myself included, we come from a long line of athletes. They just skipped a generation. Let's just say that my kids are the anti-sports kids. And
I don't know if it's just your kids. I think, have you seen the kids on the playground recently? They're not quite athletic anymore.
Man, I'm like, wow. And also, necessity is the mother of invention. So given that my wife is a lieutenant colonel in the Army. So she comes from Oakland, high school sweethearts. We've been through the ringer together, and we grew up through it. And my kids haven't had that experience. So in the back of my head, I'm like, are they ready? Can they deal with it? Mm-hmm. Have we prepared them? Because their environment is so, there's not a lot of pitfalls and traps to fall into. I had to create them. Like create them and then kick them when they're not looking so they can get into the trap, because life was just way too easy. So yeah, 100%, you need that level of competition, steel sharpening steel, that opportunity to test your mettle.
Right.
It's so important.
And I think what happens is some people, it depends. Everyone's different, right? Everyone's so different. And some people, their confidence is built on those successes, right? Building on success after success, or knowing they're going to survive swimming in the deep end. Whatever the case is, that builds their confidence to become, better at whatever it is they're going to do in life, Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, people are different. My oldest, she's going into her junior year at Howard. And she's more akin to me. She doesn't want to be put into the fire, but if it's there, she'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. My son is almost the opposite.
That's the Nicolette motto. Figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't want to be put into anything, and he'll cave under the pressure unless it's something that he created himself. If he creates it himself, he'll go gung-ho. And I've had to learn how to adapt my parenting style between all 3 of my kids, because they're just subtly different. And I think that's important from a leadership perspective, is one model doesn't fit all. Absolutely. And having that ability to adapt and change your communication strategy for different people in different circumstances makes you a leader for more than just one type of person, which any organization will have or any family will have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Nicolette and I used to talk about this all the time. Every employee is very different, and you need to sort of cater how you work with them to succeed their greatest achievement, right? Because that's, everyone's slightly different. So the message is slightly different. Your communication, exactly what you're saying, your communication style or how you're relaying it becomes. So how can companies actually do this more efficiently, right? How do they go about doing this?
Perfect segue into that question, because I think one of the workshops we do and training we do is around building out your founder story. Mm-hmm. So you have your customer story, which is about the journey of how you transition a customer from experiencing pain and problems to more peace, power, and pleasure, right? Their paradise. You got to be able to communicate that. That's a given. But there's another powerful story, two more actually, but this one, the founder story, which is important. And a lot of companies mess this up. They think the founder story is about why the company is so great based upon these founders. And that's not what a great founder story does. A great founder story doesn't tell me why you're the hero. It tells me why I should trust you in helping me to become the hero, the customer. In other words, it's a story about why you care, why you give a shit.
Right.
So when I tell people my story, I give a shit because I want to see you succeed, because I come from nothing and I get turned on when someone succeeds through my efforts. It's an edifying thing for me, and I will fight harder than anybody to help see that happen. Well, when you go into a company, the founder or leaders may have a story, but I say everybody in your company should have a founder story. Mm-hmm. They should have a story that tells why they care, why they're connected to what this company is all about. And it's deeply personal, it's deeply theirs. Something they can share with their team, with the staff, with their customers, but it's their founder story, which is the bridging glue that helps people to understand why they care about being here or serving those customers.
So what is your advice to, these companies as they, as they look for that story? You want them to be great leaders. You want them to develop their story. Where are they? I got a better question. Where are these leaders going wrong? How about that? I always like to hear that one first.
Wrong? I think wrong is just thinking that it'll all work itself out. Mm. We know the statistics for small businesses and how many of them fail. And we know that in the marketplace, increasingly, there's kind of a winner takes all. The middle is slowly being eroded and taken away. And I say there are two businesses that will survive this existential threat. Big businesses who can trade at scale. So think Amazons of the world, et cetera. Profit margins are this thin, but they can sell millions of things and dominate the market, drive prices down, very hard to compete. Yep. The other end of the spectrum is brand. Those who trade beyond product and price, who connect more deeply and authentically to their constituents or their prospects. Mm-hmm. We give those brands our attention, our love, our loyalty because of how they make us feel. And these two extremes of those who build brand and those who are big are going to be the winners in the marketplace. The middle is being decimated. It's already happening, and is so far out of the bag. I don't think there's no way to fix it. Either build a brand and insulate yourself because people care about who you are, what you do beyond product and price, or build economies of scale and be a big business. I think the mistake is to believe that you can tread water in the middle and not declare who you want to be. And that ultimately puts you in a position where you fail not only building the brand, because big businesses, that idea is pretty far away from most of us. The brand is the most accessible side, is that we don't build that so we don't have customer loyalty. We don't build it internally so we don't have culture and team and camaraderie. So we're always treading water.
Right. So how do leaders of the companies, whether they're small companies or they're the big companies, get their staffs, right, their employees to actually create their own founder story, right? Besides understanding the founder story of the company itself, but how do they get them to believe in it and start creating their own to be more inspired and more passionate about what their company's doing? That
is a great question. First, as a leader, you got to have your own.
Right.
You got to have your own founder story to where you communicate that enough to where people understand why you do what you do. Right. Not your pedigree, not your expertise, but the experience that you have had that makes you a caring person in their journey, your company's journey, right? So we have a formula we use, and you can access that at launchmystory.com. There's a free training course on that. But beyond your story, the next part is to sit people down and to have them to connect their own experiences to that story. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, one of my clients, their founder story is around why they're a lawyer. And they're a lawyer because of their mom was evicted when they were like 8 years old, and she lost everything, and people were coming after him and her family, and they were homeless for 6 months. And he promised that nobody would ever take away the livelihood of him or his family ever again. And so he wants to protect those where people are coming after their rep, their money, and their livelihood. That's his thing as a lawyer. Mm-hmm. That story converts when he tells that to a high-end client every time. because it's not just about how good you are. Sure, he has a Harvard degree. That helps. But it's that story that seals the deal. So when he walks into his staff, he asks, look, why do you care about not allowing people to be taken advantage of? When in your life have you felt unfairly prosecuted and taken? And then they share their experience. And it's like, that's why we're here. And he connected his story, their story, to their story. And now everyone is bonding around this same ethic. And you start building a culture of that. We care so deeply. No one is going to take advantage of our clients ever again. And that ethos becomes culture. That story becomes the brand. And now, not only internally are you built around it, you start to communicate that externally to everybody who is touching the brand. And this is what we call story synergy, where you're not just talking about, yeah, we're this, you're living it, you're embodying it, and it's seeping out of your pores, and you can't escape it. That is when you have story and communication really running an organization efficiently.
Well, what do you do when someone doesn't have a story? Like, what if there's the guy at that law firm and he just needs a job? He just wants some money. I mean,
yeah, that's a good question. I think you got to make the decision.
Right.
Is the benefit of this person and their skill set worth trading how they may disrupt the culture and buy-in of the collective? I was working with a company in El Paso. They were an electric company, publicly traded company. And they had some very highly skilled people in positions they couldn't remove. Like in these people, and we were doing an internal culture building thing. They were butting heads. They've been there for a decade. There were silos. There was type of drama. I was like, just fire their ass. Like move on. It's like, we can't. Their esoteric knowledge is so deeply woven into what we do. We can't find someone to replace them. Right. So I tell people, when you have a cancer inside of your organization, what do you do with the cancer? You either have to kill it or you have to insulate it and isolate it so it can't spread. Right. So the leadership has to isolate that person to a certain degree, give them autonomy within a very finite space, and make sure that you're doing extra work for all the spaces that they touch to edify the walls, right? So they don't infect the host. Right. So, you got to make the best of a best situation. But I tell leaders more often than not, err on the side of culture. You can find skills other places.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Brian?
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought you were about to say something. All right. So here's what I would love for you to leave us with, because we love storytelling so much. What are your favorite storytelling tips for those who are, whether they're looking for, on a personal level, looking to tell their story, or a brand looking to tell its story?
Yeah, understand this. I think the misnomer around story is this idea that it's about kind of this once upon a time journey thing. It's for me, that's not what story is. Story is anything that supports the narrative that allows you to communicate to someone how transformation happens. So from that perspective, what you dress like is part of your narrative. What comes out your mouth, of course, is part of your narrative. How you emphasize certain things is part of your narrative. The images on your website, the videos, all of it is part of a narrative that paints a picture. So understand that it's not just what you say. All parts of a scene help paint that picture or that narrative. And then the second thing is understand that it isn't a compelling story unless there's transformation. Right. It's not about information, it's about transformation. So before you sit down and think about who you're communicating with, you want to ask the question, what is the pain, problem, issue, or challenge that person is experiencing, right? What is the hell they are in? Your story needs to help them to become more closely connected and aware of the fact that they have in hell. Some leaders, the people they're trying to lead, don't even know they have a problem. So you got to make them hyper aware of their problem. It's almost a hurt them to heal them business. You gotta get them into that space of feeling their hell, their pain, and then tell them a story that allows them to backtrack or a journey to their pleasure. So if it doesn't have pain and then the ultimate overcoming in pleasure, it's missing some very important parts to story.
I agree. Yeah. Well, X, thank you so very much for joining us today. This was really refreshing and inspiring. But before we let you go, would you mind letting everybody know where they can learn more about you and anything else you're working on right now?
Yeah, definitely connect with me on social media, Hasani X. You can go to Lead Your Story to find out general information about our company. But if you want a free resource on what it means to build that story for branding purposes and culture building purposes, go to launchmystory.com. And there's a free story course with our UBS, our Unifying Brand Story worksheets. So you can go through the exercise of what we do for our clients who pay us tens of thousands of dollars. We give you the exact formula on how to build that story out and what it means to lead that, whether you're building brand or you're trying to build culture. So that's launchmystory.com.
Thanks again, X. We appreciate it.
Same here. It's a pleasure to be here.